Hi everybody, this is Victoria. Welcome back to another new episode of Discovering Art Together, and today we are going to talk about the wonders and mysteries of self-portraits. So in today's episode, we're going to learn a little bit more behind self-portraits, what do they mean, and the difference between self-portraits between artists, and also we're going to take a deeper look into three main paintings by Rembrandt and seeing the three different self-portraits that were created in different periods of his life. So if you guys are ready, let's get started. So throughout history, self-portrait has been a very common thing back in olden days and also in modern days as well. It's a way of self-reflection, and it's also a way to express ourselves and kind of getting to understand ourselves and also seeing ourselves in a brand new way. Another one of the reasons why a lot of artists back in the days did self-portraits is that it was a lot cheaper for artists to paint themselves in order to actually hire a model, because models can also be very expensive back in the old days, and artists are poor, unfortunately, mostly in olden days where it was very hard to get somebody to pose for you. So that's why doing self-portrait was always reliable, because the artist was always present to be painted, and then they were less picky about whether if they were made pretty or not, because it was themselves, so they were more free to do as they please if they were to do a self-portrait. Now, there are a few common reasons why artists do self-portrait, and then here are a list of few things that we can kind of learn a little bit about why doing self-portraits is a beneficial way, and also it's a great way to practice and improve your art skills. So the first is definitely communicating an emotion to yourself and then also to someone else. There is also a way of kind of keeping a memory of that time period. That's also a very good reason. A way to express yourself, and also how do you see yourself. So definitely when we paint, we kind of create it could be a realistic way of seeing yourselves. It can also be a way to kind of idealize or fantasize ourselves and see us in a different way. Get to know oneself, so you kind of build this connection between you and yourself, and you kind of discover new things about yourself. And the other thing is to expose ourselves. Also, exposing ourselves is a way to kind of share our inner emotions with someone else, or for the viewers that are looking at the painting of the self-portrait. So we kind of build a connection and express ourselves that way. I think one of the hardest thing about creating a self-portrait is actually staring at your face for such a long time, because I'm sure everybody kind of takes a glance a little bit while we're brushing our teeth and look ourselves in the mirror just for a few minutes, but we never really focus on the subtle features, the color tones, the texture, the shapes and the shadows and stuff. So doing self-portrait is a very meditative and very good training and practice for any artist. So yeah, I recommend go trying it out. So now that we know a little bit about what is the meaning behind self-portraits and why do artists create self-portraits, we're going to take a little few examples of some artists that are known for doing many self-portraits. The first one is definitely Rembrandt, and he is a painter from the Dutch Golden Age from the 17th century, and he is very well known to at least created 40 self-portraits throughout his whole lifetime. So that's pretty amazing, and he is very prolific in that sense of creating self-portraits. But not only that though, his self-portraits are really amazing and very particular and special. Now we can also take a look at some other artists that also did a lot of self-portraits. One is called Vincent van Gogh, or Van Gogh. So Van Gogh, he is also known to do a lot of self-portraits as well, but his is quite different, as you can see, where definitely depending on the style of the artist, the painting and the way it expresses are slightly different from others. Another artist that is also very well known to do self-portraits is Pablo Picasso. He did many self-portraits, and definitely in his style it will look very different from Rembrandt and Van Gogh. The other artist that we can also take a look that did self-portraits is Gustave Courbet, and he is a French painter, and there's this one very famous painting by him called The Desperate Man, and this is a great way to actually practice emotions. Like, I wouldn't expect if we could hire somebody to actually have that pose for a very long time, but if it was the artist himself, he could kind of redo that expression many times until he gets the expression right. And another person that also did a few self-portraits is Albert Dürer. He is a German painter, and he did a few self-portraits. His is also very different because from the century that he was from, very old and more ancient kind, so he's got a little bit of that Leonardo da Vinci kind of vibe to it, so very different from all the other artists that I mentioned earlier. And I wonder if Da Vinci would be considered a person that did self-portrait, because there were a lot of historians and art historians mentioning that the Mona Lisa is actually a self-portrait of Leonardo da Vinci. But at the same time, it is and it's not. So I'll leave that to you guys to kind of think a little bit about whether if Da Vinci is also considered one of those people that probably did a lot of self-portraits, but not directly. He kind of indirectly did it. Okay, so now what we're going to do here is that let's take a deeper dive into Rembrandt's 3 paintings over here today, and we're going to take a look at them side by side so we can kind of see and compare the 3 to see what are similar and what is different and unique between the 3 paintings. So the first painting that we have on the very left side is Self-Portrait in a Gorget. So that painting is painted in 1629, and then the middle painting over here is a self-portrait that he did in 1642. And the very last painting on the right side, that painting is a self-portrait done in 1660. So as you can see, each painting is done in a very different time and period in Rembrandt's life, and we'll take a look and see the difference between all 3 paintings and learn a little bit just to see what stayed and what changed. So let's see what's actually similar. Just kind of all around kind of glance at all 3 paintings. Definitely the pose is the same, as you notice that they're all kind of in this very classical 3/4 view of a portrait, because and it was very common to have portraits in this position because it makes it more interesting than just a front-facing view of it. The next thing that is very similar between all the 3 paintings is that the figure or the character that's in the painting is viewing and looking at us. So the character is looking at the viewer. So that's also a very similar thing that all three paintings do have that are similar. Now, the next thing that is also very similar is that Rembrandt is known to use this very nice chiaroscuro kind of effect and a very Baroque style with this very dramatical lighting. So we have a very strong contrast between the lights and the darks, and the way he uses lighting is still very similar throughout all three paintings. The only other thing that I kind of do notice, his choice of color is still very similar. He used a lot of earth tones, very limited color palette. Definitely the middle painting has a little bit more warmth to it. The coldest out of the three would probably be the one on the very left side. It has more of a muted color, a little bit of the warmth of the earth tones in the hair in the background though, but the face is very, very pale compared to the other two. And the third one is kind of like a little bit of a mixture. It's not too cold, it's not too warm either. So it's kind of like a balance between the two. Now let's take a look and see what are specific and special about each painting of Rembrandt's self-portraits. So as you can see, the first two skin textures, I've noticed that they are both very smooth and very kind of softly rendered compared to the third painting over here, which is a lot more texture, more rough, and a little bit more striking than the other two. So the other two are very subtle, and I can kind of see the reason why that is. Definitely the first portrait is a younger version of Rembrandt when he was probably in his 20s, maybe? And definitely in the middle painting, it was one of his most extravagant and peak of his career and his life. He has a very extravagant and luxurious feel to him, so definitely having a nice smooth and subtle skin texture and lighting, that softness kind of creates that very luxurious feeling. But once you see the third painting over here, he's been through a lot. As you can see, the roughness gives you that feeling of like he's been through a lot through his life, and there has been a lot of ups and downs and rough times throughout his career and his life, and just he's seen a lot of things. So the rough texture on the skin helps express us this emotion and feeling. So the second thing that I noticed as well is that the emotions that the three paintings give us over here. So as you can see, the first painting itself is definitely a younger version of him, correct? So he is still an artist that's discovering himself. As he did a self-portrait early on in his days, he's still not quite sure of what he's looking for. So he has this slight, not really doubt though, but he's still kind of learning. He's still discovering himself as he paints this self-portrait of himself. And as you can see, having the right side or his left side of the face being very obscured and kind of hidden within the shadows over there makes it slightly a bit mysterious, and kind of seems like, ooh, okay, I'm not sure what I am going to turn into and become in the future. So he's still kind of trying out a lot of different things, but definitely still a very beautiful portrait. And the feeling that we see in the second painting over here is very luxurious. So since this is painting in his peak and most extravagant time of his life, definitely we have a lot more luxurious feeling to it, but we see less emotions because he seems a lot more stiffer and hiding his inner and true emotions within him, and he has this some kind of like a mask on the outside, and definitely this one is very much covered in a lot of the jewels. The attention is kind of taking us towards the luxurious part of this painting, so it's kind of like a little bit more of the outer surface that we see, but not so much of the inner emotions within the person itself. Now, the third painting is very different from the middle painting and the very first painting. This third painting is everything but luxurious. It's all about emotions. So in this one, this expressed a lot deeper emotions that he's like literally seeping through his face. Like you can feel the emotions coming through his eyes, coming through his skin, coming through like the whole like aura and feeling around this self-portrait is very much his inner emotions just kind of seeping out and kind of leaking out and just kind of exposing himself. So kind of like what we mentioned a little bit earlier about some of the things that self-portraits are considered and a little bit of the meaning behind it. This one is a very good example of exposing ourselves, and he did a very good job at it because we feel so many different emotions when we take a look at this, and it's just so deep. It's a lot. You can feel that you can kind of get a lot deeper than you could with the second and the first painting. The other two were a little bit more masked, but this one he just kind of stripped all the mask off and he's like, okay, I'm just gonna show what I am currently right now. I don't care about being more extravagant on the outside. I'm just gonna stay true to what I feel and who I am, and I am showing it to you. So a lot of the focus is all put on the facial features, and having those textures on the skin really helps bring our attention to the face because there's so much to look at on his face. It's like, wow, it's amazing. It's just all the subtle details that you can see on the face there. So it's kind of like if we were to kind of add jewels onto his face and became part of his face, but at the same time it's not really the same thing. It's just we feel like he's very real, very much alive in this painting compared to the other two paintings that he did. Okay, and that is it for today. So I hope you guys enjoyed this brand new episode about the wonders and mystery behind self-portraits. I hope you guys learned a little bit more about self-portraits, and hoping that you guys try out to do a little bit of self-portraits also yourself and kind of experience what it feels like to do a self-portrait and looking at yourself for many, many hours. And don't worry, this does not mean that you're a narcissist. It's just a way of practice, of learning and discovering yourself, and just kind of have a little bit of personal time together so that you kind of get to learn something new about yourself and discover a little bit more and kind of dive deeper into your inner emotions and tap into that. But feel free to kind of get some inspiration from other artists that did a lot of self-portraits and try out different styles too. It doesn't have to be stuck in one particular style. Try out different varieties of things, and hopefully it will help you kind of open up a new perspective of yourself and kind of discovering new things about yourself as well. Okay, so mini exercise for you guys this week. So try out and paint a self-portrait of yourself and see what you can actually discover. Have a little self-meditating time and kind of have a quality time with yourself. Stare at yourself for like many hours and kind of see what you can actually dig out by painting yourself. You can probably discover a lot of new things and interesting things too as you kind of practice a little bit more and learn a little bit more about yourself. Okay, and that is it for today. Thank you again so much for tuning in to a new episode, and hoping to see you guys again next week with a brand new art episode of Discovering Art Together. And yep, have fun painting yourself and discovering yourself, and I'll see you next time. Take care, bye!